again, it's the packages that they put out, and this is where I think they missed a massive trick, because they're not encouraging people to move on to a 5G tariff. The pricing is prohibitive.
Hello and welcome to another Telecoms.com podcast. We decided to try what you could call a studio. It's more of a room at this stage. But this, watch this background, it might turn into studio in this, so we can put egg boxes and stuff. I don't know how it works. Okay, so we're trying that, and do feel free to give us feedback on whether you prefer the sort of office background. Just as a reminder that if you're watching this on Facebook or on YouTube or on the site, you can listen to it on iTunes or SoundCloud and vice versa. And I got one other brief little plug, yet another Telecoms.com sub-brand that's beloved by the industry is the awards. I just want a reminder to everyone who's listening to this that if you haven't sent an entry for the awards, then you're missing out on potential enormous recognition. So here's a little prod to submit your entry to the awards.
What are they called?
They're called the Glowtel Awards. Thanks, Pierre. Right, that's that. What are we going to talk about? I think we might be able to avoid Huawei this week, but let's see. Fingers crossed. We're going to start by talking about the official launch of 5G in the UK, and I think it might have cropped up recently in one or two other places. So we'll start by talking about that. Then we're going to talk a little bit about something we touched on last week, and there have been some developments. This big M&A between T-Mobile US and Sprint, which is taking, it's been about 2 years already, and there keeps being little twists and turns in the sort of regulatory environment for them. And then we're going to finish off with a little chat about cryptocurrency. There's been some interesting developments there. Okay. So EE, didn't actually attend the event in the flesh, but I saw all the coverage of it and EE's press release. They officially flicked the switch on 5G in 6 cities: London, Birmingham, Manchester, Cardiff, Edinburgh, Belfast. Thank you.
Four national.
Okay, so we got all. No one felt left out. That would have been a bit of a schoolboy error, wouldn't it? They'd left out. What do you know if they left out Wales? Would have been unforgivable. And they commemorated, just shaking his head, and they commemorated it by sticking a big stage in the middle of the River Thames and putting on an artist called Stormzy. I've got to admit, grime is apparently this subgenre of rap or hip hop or whatever it is, not exactly a strength of mine, as my consistent t-shirts indicate. But he stood up there and did his thing, and he even talked a bit about 5G and E and all that ting at the end of it. It was, I've got to say, so credit to EE, they obviously chucked a few quid at it. They put on a big show, they got the BBC involved doing live broadcasts and all that sort of thing. But then in the piece I actually wrote up about it, being a journalist and looking for balance, I collated a bunch of views of a few people who are a bit meh. They're a bit like, okay, great, well done EE, but what does that actually mean? What's the big deal? So, and I think, a lot of these things that we've covered when we're talking about 5G in general in the past, for example, 5G in its current incarnation is basically just a bit more mobile broadband. Yeah. It isn't all that other good stuff. Yeah. And what does that mean for consumers? So, I might throw that one out there first. Jamie, as a consumer, if you're with EE or whoever you're with, and 5G became available to you, would you jump at it?
No. It's completely redundant at the moment. There are no applications on the market which require that much.
Not even 4K streaming.
No, but even if what's the point in having 4K streaming on your mobile device anyway? Quite. You're not going to have any. The screen size isn't big enough to make use of 4K video. Yeah. HD is good. HD is better than SD, but you only need, I think they say, between 5 to 10 megabits per second consistently to stream HD video. So at the moment, you're spending money on redundant headroom in the sort of the data tariffs. What's the point in getting 100 megabits per second, which isn't even the 5G promise.
That's the low end. Yeah, I think when the BBC was showing it was 200 something on average, and at the peak point it reached about 700-800 mega.
But that's
the peak.
But again, that's slightly redundant because devices are never going to get 800 megabits per second.
So it's the handset that most handsets don't support that at the moment.
But from the services and the applications perspective, it's completely redundant because there's not going to be any irrelevance of whether they can actually deliver it at, and you've got the capability of hitting 100 megabits per second, which is probably all the base stations are going to get for these phones in the first couple of years anyway, until the genuine upgrades and release 16, which is coming next year, actually come through. That's where you get the real high throughput speeds. What is the point? I mean, at the moment, you pay for a data service, and as long as that data service satisfies the demands of your phone, is there any point in paying above for a service which offers 100 megabits per second? It's completely redundant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was interesting just looking on the press release. The press release is obviously very effusive and heavy on hyperbole and what a big deal all this is. But then looking for the sort of the hook, the consumer hook, we still only get those sorts of, look, you can download the entirety of War and Peace in 1 nanosecond type of thing. It's still a speeds and feeds sort of play. And as you say, we're all right. There's nothing, when I've got a 4G connection, there's very few times I feel really bandwidth constrained where I'm really frustrated at the lack of bandwidth I've got. So I agree with you, Jamie. They're sort of solving a problem that doesn't exist.
I mean, the only immediate use case that I can see is when you're in somewhere like central London and the network is congested. But I mean, that's completely irrelevant. If I'm walking around the South Bank and I'm struggling to get on a 4G network, it's not because the speed isn't fast enough. It's because the pipe isn't big enough. And 5G will correct that because it will allow more data to flow through the pipe. And
big loads of sort of mid and high frequency bandwidth they can use up.
But then at the same time, that's not what EE are suggesting. They're not saying you can get more data and more devices can connect to a single base station. They're saying you will get faster data, which is beside the point, to be perfectly honest. In any case, and the only way that this, you can download a HD movie in 3 minutes or whatever, makes a difference is if you're caching the content on your device, because then, but in most cases, you're live streaming. So there's no point in having incredibly fast download speeds and downloading an entire file because it doesn't get cached. You're actually streaming through most video applications, not actually downloading the content onto your phone. So again, it's a bit redundant.
So Wei, your background, or a lot of your background, I know you have a rich and varied background.
Just say I'm old.
Back in the last century, no. Your background, some of it is in mobile media and all that sort of thing. So, imagine you were still doing some of those jobs before where you've got to sort of think of maybe a way to use this new resource. Are there any particular areas where if you were doing it, you'd flag up to tap into the potential of 5G?
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting is one case I did quite a bit of research in my previous job was LTE broadcasting. And one of the companies that actually had invested in quite a bit of research was the BBC.
Right.
And they've showcased in a few live events using LTE broadcasting to live broadcast events. There was a debate at that time already as whether operators I think they were working with primarily EE at that time.
Right.
There was already a debate at that time whether operators should go for LTE broadcasting or should they wait for 5G. Apparently, the answer now is 5G is there.
Right. And can you remind me what LTE broadcast? Because it was a standard that was sort of in parallel to regular LTE.
Yeah. So if broadcasting by definition means is not single casting. So
so one thing to
so it's one to many instead of one to one. So if you are using normal cellular network to do live casting of a sports event, for example, 50,000 people sitting in a stadium trying to stream a football match to their friends, then you need so many channels.
Yeah.
But broadcasting, I mean, well, by definition, it's just one. You don't need so many channels. So that's the particular broadcasting.
And obviously, broadcast technology's been around for about a century, isn't it, or plus?
Yeah.
If you take sort of radio and all that sort of thing.
But you take that to the cellular context.
Right.
So that was one particular case that I found quite interesting, that 5G is finally declaring the end of LTE broadcasting.
Right.
So no one is no longer talking about it. Although, I mean, another angle I'm looking at the EE launch is finally 5G is coming to Europe. So we've been talking about Asia leading 5G, North America leading 5G. Yes, I mean, South Korea launched earlier, the US launched earlier than Europe, but finally, I mean, Swisscom launched in April in 50 something cities, towns I think they call it, but including all the big cities. Then EE launched here, 6 cities, and Vodafone is going to launch in July or June. July,
I thought we were supposed to be miles behind. That narrative's not playing.
Yeah, well, we are half a year behind.
Okay. Because like in South Korea, they're up and running fully now, aren't they?
Verizon launched in November. South Korea sort of soft launched in December. Then they formally launched a couple of months ago.
Okay.
So Asia and North America are ahead of us, but Europe is not that behind, as some commentators were saying, not too long ago. So but at the same time, you see Germany is still sort of slowly moving there, and other markets are still building the network. So there will be more networks in Asia, I believe, and North America, they are launching it, they are rolling it out to more cities. But Europe is not that slow, so in that sense, it's probably good news. Yes.
And just to finish off, asking you about this. So I asked Jamie if he's excited by it and whether, as a consumer, he's excited by it. How about you?
No, I think me in personally, no, because I'm on EE. But I think the LTE network is good enough for me. And just for example, you are using. I haven't checked out their tariffs yet. If I'm going to use 5G and if I'm going to stream 8K video over 5G, that could burn my data package probably in one go. And I would up my package vastly to use the service.
And
I mean, that's the thing. It's the packages that they put out, and this is where I think they missed a massive trick, because they're not encouraging people to move on to a 5G tariff. The pricing is prohibitive. The cheapest you can get is something like, if you want a 5G device included, is something like 69 quid a month or something like that, and 100 quid up front or something stupid, not exact right numbers.
Total cost of ownership coming up to about 2k over the course of the contract.
But the big bit of oversight for me is that is stopping people getting onto the contract, whereas you want to encourage as many people as possible onto a 5G contract, because it's cheaper to deliver connectivity through 5G tariffs than it is to deliver through 4G tariffs.
That's supposed to be one of the benefits, isn't it?
It's incredibly efficient. So the more people you have on a 5G tariff, admittedly this will, if they do encourage more people on, they'd have to accelerate their capex plans. But the more people you move onto 5G, the cheaper it becomes to run your business, because the business of delivering data is actually cheaper.
No,
so they're missing out on a huge trick with the prohibitive nature of the. I mean, I've gone on to. I mean, you got my story that I wrote last week.
So just for people
where I
who
listed all the tariffs.
Right. Yeah, I'll get onto that. Just while you were talking, I remembered that I got a text message. I'm an EE customer as well. That I got a text message from them.
Welcome to 5G.
Just saying, discover 5G. 5G is here. Experience a more reliable connection in the busiest places. Speeds like you've never seen before, and near instant connection, and so on.
Another point that you wrote, Scott, in your reporting is that someone was speaking to you about the sort of digital divide, not in the normal sense we would associate with that term, is actually the divide between.
That was Jamie. That was the piece he's referring to. Where he spoke about like a two-tier type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's the prohibitive.
So we're still not reaching 95% coverage of LTE yet, and in the 6 cities, we start talking about 5G. So, will it actually increase the digital divide inside the country? So, that's another way of looking at it.
I mean, this is what we're talking about here. Like, the cheapest, if you want to go for a Samsung device, which I'm assuming, considering it's the market leader, most people will.
I want Huawei one.
The cheapest one is £58 a month, and that's £149 up front.
Yeah.
Now, that's 5 gig of data. I mean, that's never going to last you a month.
No,
admittedly,
I laugh at 5 gigs.
Red Extra. No, sorry, this is Vodafone, so that's Red Extra.
Oh, right.
I'm not 100% sure what the actual bonus you get from that is.
Okay.
But and then it's the same. They've only just slightly undercut EE. I mean, it's not. But they haven't actually.
But EE starts at a really big
gigabytes.
At 30 gig. They don't have a smaller one.
They have 10 gigabytes, but that's still £74 a month, and that's still prohibitive. There's a lot of people who limit their data spend every single month so they can get away with a £20 to £30 contract. And are they going to swap out and go to £70 a month?
So that the cheapest one on the table you put there is 59. Plus.
That's for a OnePlus device.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So you're looking over there. Either way, the total cost of ownership is close to 2K at the cheapest. Where, if you bear in mind that the smartphone market is such that you can get a pretty decent smartphone for certainly under 500 quid. So they're asking you to find an extra £1.5 grand.
Yeah, it's for me. It's just they've just gone about it entirely the wrong way. And marketing on speed is so unhealthy. It paints them into a corner because everyone's going to get that speed. It creates an unrealistic experience in some people's heads because they're not going to get those speeds all the time, or at least for the first couple of years. And it's leaning on this idea of a race to the bottom. If you purely focus your business model and your retail marketing efforts around faster, bigger, stronger, you're never going to add value because you're offering the exact same thing as your competitor.
But the thing is, the 5G networks now, that's about the only thing they can offer. Because you can't offer any other sort of more advanced real 5G functionalities nowadays, because it's a hybrid network.
You can make it cheaper.
But that's different.
You can make it cheaper.
The speed is now pretty much the only thing.
Well, no, you can. If you get enough people on a 5G network, all of a sudden, like I said before, you completely you realise so many more cost efficiencies because of the cost of delivering connectivity. So you can go on price instead of on speed.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine what happens within operators is you get a hell of a lot of tension between various bits, various silos within there. So the engineers and those sorts of people may well go with Jamie's argument. The marketing people obviously want to make out it's the best thing since sliced bread the whole time.
Yeah.
The commercial people want to charge a premium because they want to show some immediate ROI or something like that. So you're going to get various stakeholders battling it out, and I suspect that's how you sometimes end up with these quite short-termist, sort of myopic approaches. But we'll see. It'd be fascinating. Presumably they'll start publishing by the end of the year, sort of 5G installed base, and it'd be fascinating to see what happens either way. If we're all wrong and people are prepared to pay this premium and the install base is really is much higher than expected, then great. And if it's not, then it'd be interesting to see what they do about it. Are they going to suddenly drop their pants on price, or are they going to start throwing in... I suspect they won't want to drop their pants on price. I reckon they'll start trying to throw in more freebies, more incentives, more bundled stuff to make it, or maybe make the handsets cheaper or something like that.
I just can't see. I mean, they're going to have to do something in 6 months' time because you know, if you actually look at the coverage maps, when you go to places like, if you actually look at what EE offers in, say, like Belfast or Cardiff, you're looking at a huge coverage area across the sort of the downtown area or the city centre. It's pretty much everywhere you would want to be. It covers all the work environments and the highly congested areas in Cardiff. But that's easy to do because Cardiff is only a city of 350, you know, to up to 400,000. Geographically, it's not a huge area. So creating the network density in that sort of environment is very easy.
Yeah.
Where they're going to really hurt themselves is London, where they're offering these extortionately priced tariffs for minimal amounts of data, and then all of a sudden you're only delivering it around the real hotspots. Like if I had to look on the coverage map, I think the South Bank area is a real hotspot.
Right, where we are now.
Not where we are now actually.
Oh.
This far away,
even
like
a
on
couple hundred
backsides,
yards further back.
We're not getting coverage here, but further along, like down towards the Globe and down towards sort of Blackfriars Station, that sort of area is a sort of a densified area.
Which is probably why they lobbed poor old Stormzy out into the middle of the Thames.
So you're getting a lot of coverage around there, but the geographical coverage over London is so limited. So you're just going to cripple people's expectations, and you're going to turn people off from the idea of 5G from the offset.
Mm-hmm. So Jamie, you went to like the soft launch of this 5G. Did you not get invited to see Stormzy?
No, I didn't actually.
Are you a fan?
No.
Oh, okay. So not a big loss. What about you, Wei? You Stormzy kind of guy?
No.
No. Okay. Right. We're all alright then. So don't worry, we're cool with that.
Didn't miss out too much.
Yeah, okay. Fine. Cool. Anyone else, before we move on, got any other thoughts about sort of 5G in the UK? Like timelines, do we think this time next year we're going to be a bit more excited about it? Jamie?
No, I mean timelines look alright from the EE launch. I mean I haven't had a chance to go into the sort of the nitty gritty of Vodafone yet, but from EE they look like they're going to be 2 to 3 years down the line, and sort of like 2022 is when it's going to start launching the sort of the mission critical latency services onto the network.
It's a slow burn.
Yeah, it's a slow burn. I mean, it's going to be so next year is when you get sort of like genuine 5G with the release 16. So there's a lot more of total cost of ownership, sort of virtualization, those sort of latency and the core standards that will come out. So I mean, aside from that, it's nothing really to get that excited about. I mean, this is just something for the telcos to shout about, because the telcos are terrible at innovation and finding something to shout about.
And then they've finally got a hook.
Yeah, well,
so they're desperate to flog it, and they often do it too early.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, they've been struggling to say anything new over the last couple of years, and this has led to, we're going to undercut each other on price and try and overdo each other on speeds. Hence why you get all these false promises, which Ofcom and the Advertising Standards Agency or Authority are hitting people all the time. Because I mean, you've got to be realistic. Over the last 10 years, where has innovation come from in the telco industry? It's probably come from the handset manufacturers. That is what the telcos shout about on adverts.
Yeah, or by
actually
OTTs from whom the telcos make no money. Partners.
Yeah. So it's not actually come from the telcos themselves. They're devoid of any inspiration and innovation themselves. So that's why their messaging has become so redundant, and their customer services scores are so low because they're failing to meet expectations.
Mm-hmm. Wei, when are you going to start getting excited about 5G?
When the real 5G is there. So what Jamie said. So when they can start delivering the real sort of low latency services, that would make it more exciting. So meaning the real standalone mode is being adopted by more and more.
And it probably won't be
interesting.
A lot of it we probably won't even consume through a smartphone. It'll be things like sort of clever car stuff.
It will be more for industrial cases.
Yeah.
I mean, probably for consumers it will still be more higher speed and lower tariffs.
Right.
But for industrial cases and for the professionals, that will be more exciting time.
Well, I think in 2 to 3 years' time there will be a bang on about there not being the case for the speed at the moment, and there not being any applications or services which demands the requirements of 5G at the moment. But that's I think in 2-3 years' time there will be there will be these services and applications on the market, but that's
live gaming or something like that.
Yeah, cloud gaming,
sort of immersive gaming,
Yeah.
and you could even have some tactile feeling on your gloves and stuff
Right.
like that. But that needs end-to-end real 5G, and that's something that you still can't deliver at this moment.
I think yes, it does need that, but I don't think that's the big issue. I think the big issue is where something like Uber, for instance, was one of the poster boys and the flag bearers of the 4G evolution.
Mm-hmm.
But Uber didn't exist, and the concept of Uber didn't exist until 4G was on the market and people had a chance to play around with it.
It certainly didn't ramp until that was fully established.
Yeah. Exactly. So you're gonna get all these services which emerge just purely because the really creative thinkers haven't had a chance to play around with 5G, and this is part of the reason why scaling 5G is so important. You know, if you've got the 5G test beds, you invite the innovators in to play around and create new products. If you can scale it to a city, all of a sudden they've got a POC where they can roll out sort of beta services to the general public and fine-tune their offering. If you roll out 5G to the entire UK economy, they've got a scaled audience where they can actually become a genuine business. Then that becomes a leap board onto the international market once you've got your core domestic market.
Cool.
This is part of the reason why the US was so dominant in the 4G area, because they nailed 4G and created that national test bed for international growth.
Yeah.
And the first country that can get a scaled 5G on a national level will probably create, you know, the unicorns and the wondrous companies
really
that will exist in the next
which is
5G
why
era.
there's so much rhetoric around sort of winning the race and investing in it and all that sort of thing. Okay, we better move on from there. But I'm going to hand the ball fairly squarely back to you, Jamie, because you've written one or two things this week about this big mega merger between T-Mobile US and Sprint, and there's a few extra little sort of nuances creeping in there. So why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so last week the FCC came out and they said we'll approve the merger as long as you got these three concessions, which was, you know, rolling out 5G across 97% of the country within 3 years, not to raise prices during this period, and to sell off the Boost brand.
Right, that was already a thing, that Boost, wasn't it?
Yeah. So those are the FCC conditions, and Sprint and T-Mobile said, yeah, that's fine. So then the DOJ came out over the weekend and says, right, okay, we're not too sure because we still feel that competition is going to be negatively impacted by...
Even with all those concessions?
Even with all those concessions, it's going to be negatively impacted by the fact you're going from 4 to 3 telcos. Right,
so it's the sort of European Commission view,
yes,
isn't it?
Yeah. So they're alleged, they haven't come out with anything official yet. Their alleged concession is that assets, both infrastructure and spectrum assets, are spun out of Sprint and T-Mobile to create a fourth national player, which will compete alongside.
Yeah, and that's happened. Isn't that what happened? Is it in Italy? There's certainly been places where they've allowed consolidation as long as... Yeah, it was Italy. That's what created Free Italia. Iliad Italia, sorry, yeah. So they're kind of mimicking what's happened in a few European places where they only let consolidation happen as long as the two that were merging just basically gave up a bunch of assets for a new entrant to take.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, and I just think it's gonna... I mean, this is why I'm now convinced that this merger will not go ahead. That these 4 operators will remain as 4 operators moving forwards, because, number one, assuming that these concessions are correct from the DOJ, and they're true, first of all, Sprint and T-Mobile have to put forward a plan which the DOJ agrees to. So that's the first hurdle. Secondly, if you're taking out these assets from the Sprint and T-Mobile business and to create a fourth player, which there's no details on where the fourth player will come from, theoretically they can just turn around and say a fourth player has to exist, build it from the ground up. But, you know, time and money constraints, that's never going to happen. So if you take the assets out of Sprint and T-Mobile, you weaken the proposition of the combined company because it doesn't have the full spectrum or asset portfolio that they're
to
striving
compete
towards.
the big two. Yeah.
So it weakens their position and completely undermines the justification for the
I agree.
the merger in the first
I
place.
think they could at least make everyone chip in a bit. Like if their concern is about healthy competition, then they should make Verizon and AT&T lob in a bit of spectrum, whatever it is that's needed.
The problem is that dead ends the transaction straight away, because AT&T and Verizon want to block this transaction because they don't want a highly competitive third player.
So they could just go, no, we're not.
So they just go no, and all of a sudden the concession doesn't exist anymore. So I mean, I just think I just can't see it going ahead anymore, because number one, the newly merged company just doesn't deliver on the promise of creating enhanced competition, because you're weakening the position of the new company by stripping assets out of it. Number two, these three companies will be terrified of a new aggressive fourth player coming into the market. Just look what Free did in France, and look what Iliad did in Italy.
Yeah.
They hooved that market share and destroyed the business models.
It's the ARPUs that they really damaged, because you get healthy price competition for once.
And thirdly, we're assuming that the DOJ is going to say yes anyway. We're assuming that this is going to be okay. They might say no.
Yeah.
And they might say no first.
Well,
that's
what you've written about is that they're kind of inclined to say no.
I think it's going to be. I just can't see how this merger is going to go ahead anymore.
Yeah, I think the point you made was quite valid. The longer the whole process drags on, the less likely it will happen. So it's probably the case.
Yeah.
One thing I want to say about who the fourth entrant would be, it's a slightly forced segue onto another story you just wrote today, but it's not like there's any shortage of companies in the States who are constantly looking to poke their nose into new areas. So before I hand it back to you, you wrote a story, just a rumour, that Amazon might be interested in buying Boost. So Boost, I don't think we stressed it on this, Boost is specifically a prepaid, i.e. pay-as-you-go sub-brand. And most big MNOs have sort of pay-as-you-go sub-brands and they market them differently and generally aim them at younger people and skinter people and all that sort of thing. And so there's something saying that Amazon was sniffing around that, and obviously if Amazon's sniffing around that, then if they're considering that, this is a big if, then why wouldn't they consider being a full-time sort of player?
I think because of the price. They're talking about $3 billion Boost will fetch, but that's $3 billion to effectively be an MVNO.
Yeah,
because
seems like a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah,
but I guess they've got a big sort of client base or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, Boost is one of the biggest around, but I mean, ultimately, what you've got to remember there is not really competition for the three players, because it's an MVNO on the Sprint T-Mobile network. So it won't actually be an independent network. I mean, could one of the big players come in and buy the assets? Maybe, but I just don't think that. I think Google has shown that it's not very good at running an infrastructure business, but the web scale players are very good at running customer facing, the retail side of the business.
So, which is why MVNO suits them better.
Yes, MVNO suits them greatly, but I don't think they want to get involved in because running a network is hard. And you look at BT, in the UK, they employ like 80,000 people. We're looking at probably 40,000 of those are at least. Or maybe 30,000, they're field engineers. So they're people that are actually in the field, running the network, fixing the network, installing... Doing
utilities stuff.
Yes, yeah.
And utilities business is very different from a sort of full-blown commercial business.
Yeah, I mean this is the fundamental difference between someone like Amazon and someone like AT&T. Like AT&T has a pedigree of running a physical business. So Amazon is a bad example there, because it's got courier. Because it's got it delivers.
It's not pure.
It's not.
Google maybe.
Google. They don't have a field engineering force. And they don't have any experience in running that type of physical business.
But to be honest, even with Amazon, what they're good at, and I look at people who drop stuff off. Which happens all too often. But most of the people who are actually dropping it off are just contractors. They're very good at that sort of 0 hours.
But don't forget, they do still employ like well over 100,000 people, and a lot of that is sort of in physical fulfillment centres. So the logistical side of the business, actually running a factory, as it were.
Yeah.
A depot.
But their most profitable business is the cloud computing part. So, but even if they were going to buy Boost to start with, I don't think that will qualify them as the fourth competitor.
No, because they don't.
My point was, if they're willing to go that far, are they willing to go further? And Jamie's counterpoint is there's a big difference.
It would, but I think the point you made, or probably some analysts who talked to you, was making a lot of sense. Is even if they were going to buy Boost, it would be part of their overall proposition. So adding value to what they already had, they already offer, for example, their cloud services or their consumer facing, the Prime bundles, instead of sort of competing with the AT&Ts and the Verizons. So I mean, even if that should happen, it would not sort of really meeting the demand of what the DOJ is.
I mean, like I said there, it's not an independent because it'd be an MVNO. And this is one of the batshit things about the US market anyway, because their MVNOs are tied to networks, and so they're not real genuine MVNOs. What does it stand for? Mobile Virtual Network Operator. So in theory, a UK MVNO, if I'm Leica and I've got a mobile with, I don't know who their relationship with is, it's O2, and they all of a sudden they go, okay, actually I'm going to go across to this network. The idea of eSIM, which has been developing for years, means they can just automatically switch over. But in the US, if you want to switch networks, it involves switching out all the SIMs that are in all the individual phones. But this is the crazy thing about prepaid phones is you don't know who your customers are. You don't need to provide ID to buy a SIM card. You're not tied into a contract. There's no billing address 90% of the time, unless you're paying by card. Then there obviously is a billing address. X percentage,
or by cryptocurrency,
X percentage of your prepaid customers, you've got no idea who you are, so you can't swap out those SIMs unless you appeal to them to come in and change the SIM card.
I'm going to force the segue, which that last comment was a sort of very clumsily forced segue, because Jamie, you got to bail in a few minutes. Cryptocurrency. So AT&T, one thing I wrote, they've started accepting cryptocurrency to pay bills, which I realised I hadn't really been keeping an eye on it as a sector, but more and more big blue chip companies are accepting cryptocurrency. I'd still thought of Bitcoin as a bit of this crazy Wild West stuff that's only the sort of interest to wild speculators and sort of internet conspiracy theorists, but apparently not. It's becoming very mainstream. So the AT&T one is sort of incidental in that it happens to be a phone company, but they're also one of the biggest, most established companies in the world. So you can now pay for your phone bill with Bitcoin. But the even more interesting cryptocurrency story for me this week was that apparently Facebook, is it you that wrote this, Jamie?
Yes.
Yeah, that Facebook, well, it wasn't me, that kind of narrows it down, but Facebook is launching its own cryptocurrency. I think the reason I'm going to keep going on about it for a bit longer is because I read another article analysing it about just the whole, it's more the concept, the whole concept of individual brands that are not involved in financial services creating financial service sub-brands, which is massively facilitated by cryptocurrency. Because apparently what Facebook wants is for you to use Facebook currency to buy stuff or to have some kind of commercial interaction on Facebook. And then it'll give you some kind of, some kind of virtual reward. And so basically by owning the currency, it locks you into its ecosystem even more than before, which I think is at the same time interesting and ominous. Like one thing where you and I have chatted about in the past is this social credit thing they got going on in China, which to those people who aren't aware of it is basically a sort of score system for people's behaviour where they're rewarded for behaving in a state-approved way and they're punished for misbehaving, again by state-approved parameters. And I can see that happening in microcosm on platforms like Facebook. So imagine if you're using this Facebook currency and then you post up something that's a bit moody, some sort of crazy opinionated, bigoted stuff, Do you then start getting punished in this cryptocurrency and all that sort of thing? Anyway, I just thought I'd chuck that out. We've only got a couple of minutes left.
You don't need the cryptocurrency to punish people.
No, that's true. People are getting kicked off.
They get banned.
But maybe they'd like a more subtle instrument rather than just banning people.
Yeah.
Maybe they'd like to just sort of punish them or de-rank them or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I Jamie has done some research in.
Yeah, we'll finish off on
in cryptocurrency, but my sort of rather rudimentary research is I still found the whole logic a bit flawed, because it's purely defined the value of cryptocurrency is purely determined by supply and demand.
To some extent, and speculation.
Yeah. So all the currencies, when they were issued, there is a nominal value to it.
Yeah.
So a few cents, for example, and then it's just to the market to define its value. And that's why you have such long tail. I believe there must be thousands of cryptocurrencies out there, but you only have two, probably the most valuable ones. Bitcoin being one, and Ethereum.
Ethereum. And there's another one called Ethereum.
Yeah,
which is quite popular.
That sound like drugs to me.
Well, they are.
It's good, like Ethereum.
Yes. So, I mean, how the fundamental problem with, my fundamental problem with cryptocurrency is how to value it.
Right.
A few years ago, a university in Cyprus, I think, started accepting tuition fees being paid by Bitcoins.
Right.
Well, if they got some, and if they cashed them last year, they made big fortunes. But if they held them on,
it's just so volatile.
Exactly.
Well,
I mean, it kind of depends what type of cryptocurrency you have, though, because there's nothing to say that you have to have a cryptocurrency which is floating through.
Well, I think the Facebook one actually is pegged to the dollar, funnily enough, which makes you wonder why they bother. But
this is the other way to go about it, and this is one of the reasons why I think the cryptocurrency for Facebook is a good idea. In that you can either, if you go for an initial coin offering like you're talking about, that's like basically like an IPO, and like you said, market demands dictate on how much that coin is worth per share. If you just tie it to the dollar and you use it as an internal service, it's basically just virtual cash.
Exactly. So that's different, right?
Yeah, which is different. And the reason I think one of the reasons I think Facebook are doing it is because if you look at where Facebook is actually going to make money, I completely agree with you, tying people into the ecosystem, and meaning people purchasing on webs cannot go directly to the actual advertiser, so that keeps people on the core platform. It also it creates a bit more trust in the advertisers, because if you buy with Facebook's cryptocurrency off a supplier that you've never come across before, theoretically you're paying them in Facebook dollars.
Yeah.
So it's Facebook that's taking
the
risk.
Intermediary.
They're the intermediary. Okay. And there'll be a process that if it's dodgy, you can just claim back your Facebook dollars. Yeah. And finally, which I think is probably the most important reason, is you're looking Facebook's growth area and the real commercial benefits are in regions where bank accounts aren't really, they're not ubiquitous. So you're looking at areas that they can buy cryptocurrency, they can buy Facebook coins, cash in a store, and then all of a sudden they're credited to your account, and then all of a sudden you can be part of the digital economy without having a bank account.
It's a similar concept to, we used to talk like years ago about carrier billing in that same way, and we had a little bit of like Vodafone, M-Pesa and that sort of thing.
Yes.
So a similar sort of
I think that's one of the big reasons.
To that.
Especially when you look in somewhere like Kenya, where a lot of the transactions are run, I think it's something like more than 50% are in Pesa.
Way higher than that.
Yeah,
70, 80.
Really, really high. So I think that's an area where...
that is a good idea. I'll concede that one totally.
But then I think it'll fail for two reasons. Firstly...
I've just conceded, now you're telling me on...
Three reasons it'll fail. I think it's a very good idea, but I think it'll fail. Number one, you're asking people to trust Facebook with their money, which is a lot different from personal data because it's physical and I earned it.
And trust with Facebook is not at an all-time high.
No.
Is it?
Credibility of Facebook isn't incredibly high at the moment.
Stole your thunder at all.
The second thing is people don't spend money on stuff they don't understand. And as you can tell from, I mean, I don't understand it. I've got a very, very basic understanding of cryptocurrency, and I've done some research into it. You know, man on the street doesn't understand it, so why would he spend money on it? Yeah. And thirdly, it's also unregulated.
Yeah.
It's completely unregulated in the UK, at least, anyway. Elsewhere in the world, there's sort of different levels of regulation, but it's completely unregulated here, at least. So people will not have the confidence to invest in something that is very unregulated. I mean, just look at how many people got stung from Bitcoin.
Yeah.
How many people talk about investing in cryptocurrency on a day-to-day basis now? Not very many.
No, and yet if you bought it a year ago, you'd be laughing now. But it's just so volatile, you just never know.
Yeah.
Right, I'm gonna start to wrap it up because I know you've got a thing to do in a couple of minutes. But yes, I think that's really interesting, and I suppose my final thought is that they'll just launch it and leave it out there, and then leave it as a slow burner. It doesn't have to be a sort of massive winner straight away.
Well, you say that. They tried it once before and they failed.
Right.
Facebook credits in 2013 or 2011 were launched, and it was shut down 2 years later. So
right. Well,
that was massively ahead of the cryptocurrency trend. So it might be different.
So they've either got... Yeah, if they haven't decided it's a slow burner and they're going to pull the plug on it if it doesn't take off straight away, then they're wasting their time, I think. All right, let's stop it there. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening. Make sure you join us for the next one. Cool.